The 10th U.S. presidential election took place in 1824. John Quincy Adams faced Andrew Jackson. Jackson received over 38,000 more votes than Quincy Adams, but Quincy Adams won the election. The 1824 election was the first time a candidate won a U.S. presidential election while losing the national popular vote. But it wasn't to be the last. 52 years later, in 1876, Samuel Tilden got over 250,000 more votes than Rutherford Hayes, but Hayes won the election. Just 12 years after that, in 1888, Benjamin Harrison was elected president over Grover Cleveland despite getting 90,000 less votes than Cleveland. It didn't happen again for over a century, but in the year 2000, Al Gore lost the election to George W. Bush despite getting over 500,000 more votes than Bush. And of course, in 2016, Donald Trump became president despite obtaining almost 3 million less votes than his opponent, Hillary Clinton. In 5 out of 58 U.S. presidential elections, around 9% of them, the winner has obtained less votes than the loser. This is, of course, because in the United States, the vice president and president are elected indirectly, not by the voters, but by the Electoral College. Let's dig in. The Electoral College system results in a state-by-state winner-take-all election mechanic that allows a candidate to win an election whilst receiving less votes than her opponent. A great way to illustrate this is to take a look at the 2016 election. Here's the national electoral map, but let's focus on 4 states. Hillary Clinton got over 4.2 million more votes than Donald Trump did in California, so she got the state's 55 electoral votes. But Trump won Florida, Michigan, and Ohio, and thus all 63 of those states' electoral votes by a combined margin of only 570,000 votes. So Clinton's massive 4.2 million vote margin in California was worth less electoral votes than Trump's relatively paltry 570,000 vote margin in Florida, Michigan, and Ohio. If we consider just those 4 states, Clinton got 3.7 million more votes, but 8 less electoral votes. This 4-state example is an apt microcosm of the entire 2016 election and demonstrates exactly how candidates can get more votes than their opponents and lose elections. The state-by-state winner-take-all nature of the mechanism in place makes it possible. A quick tangent. The number of electoral votes assigned to each state is equal in number to its congressional delegation, which consists of its 2 senators and all of its representatives, the number of which is determined by the state's population. California, for example, has 53 representatives in the House, so that, plus its 2 senators, gives us its total electoral votes, 55. When I said that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote in California and thus received the state's 55 electoral votes, it sounded like it's an automatic. Clinton wins California, so the state's 55 electoral votes go to her column. But it's not that simple. What actually happened when Clinton won California is that the California state legislature appointed 55 electors loyal to Clinton to the Electoral College. All of the other state legislatures did the same thing. They appointed electors pledged to the winner of the state's popular vote to the Electoral College. The Electoral College is composed of all the electors appointed by all 50 states and the District of Columbia. Then, on the first Monday after the second Wednesday in December, each state's electors meet in their respective state capitals to cast their votes. These votes are then sent to Congress, where they are tabulated in the first week in January. This count is what actually determines the winners of the election, the president-elect and the vice president-elect. There are a couple of wrinkles to this. The Constitution empowers the states to determine the manner in which their electors are chosen. 48 out of the 50 states have laws that require that the winner of the statewide popular vote receive all of the state's electors. But the remaining 2 states, Maine and Nebraska, assign 2 electors based on the statewide popular vote and assign the remaining electors based on the popular vote in each of the congressional districts. So the electoral vote count in both Maine and Nebraska could conceivably include votes for different candidates. In addition to that, there's the issue of the so-called faithless electors, or electors who do not vote for the candidates they are pledged to. The measures taken against faithless electors, if any, and the status of their faithless votes vary from state to state, because the Constitution leaves it to the states to determine not only how they appoint their electors, but also the rules governing their conduct. So, to recap, every 4 years, citizens vote in their respective states for president and vice president, but they're really voting for the electors pledged to those candidates. The state legislatures then appoint the electors based on the election results. The electors then cast their votes, Congress tallies them, and thus determines the winners. All of this invites two questions. Why do we have such a complicated system to elect our president and vice president? Should we continue to use this complicated system? Question 1. Why did the Founding Fathers choose this system? At the time of the Constitutional Convention, 1787, the United States was composed of 13 states, each jealous of its own rights and suspicious of any central national government. The country's 4 million people were spread over thousands of miles, barely connected by transportation or communication. So national campaigns were impractical and political parties were deemed mischievous, if not downright evil. Moreover, at the time, it was widely felt that gentlemen should not campaign for public office. The saying was, the office should seek the man should not seek the office. Putting aside the blatant sexism, a quaint and noble sentiment. So, the constitutional framers were faced with designing a mechanism to choose a president in an environment without political parties and without national campaigns, and the mechanism could not upset neither the balance between the presidency and the Congress, nor the balance between the states and the federal government. They considered several possible methods. One idea was to have the Congress choose the president. This idea was rejected, however, because some felt it would be too divisive an issue and lead to hard feelings in the Congress. Others felt that such a procedure would invite unseemly political bargaining, corruption, and perhaps even interference from foreign powers. Still others felt that such an arrangement would upset the balance of power between the legislative and executive branches of the federal government. A second idea was to have the state legislatures select the president. This idea, too, was rejected out of fears that a president so beholden to the state legislatures might permit them to erode federal authority and thus undermine the whole idea of a federation. A third idea was to have the president elected by a direct popular vote. Direct election was rejected not because the framers of the Constitution doubted public intelligence, but rather because they feared that without sufficient information about candidates from outside their state, people would naturally vote for a favorite son from their own state or region, so no president would emerge with a popular majority sufficient to govern the whole country. Also, the choice of president would always be decided by the largest, most populous states with little regard for smaller ones. Another idea rejected. Finally, they arrived at an indirect election through a college of electors. The original concept was for the most knowledgeable and informed individuals from each state to select a president based solely on merit and without regard to state of origin or political party. As originally conceived, the members of the Electoral College were not pledged to any candidate or party. The people voted for the electors themselves, trusting that they, the electors, were the best suited to choose the president and vice president. Over the years, with the advent of political parties and national campaigns, the state legislatures modified the method by which their electors were appointed, eventually arriving at where we are today. Electors are, with few exceptions, pledged to the party and candidate that wins the popular vote in each state. Question 2. Should we continue to use the Electoral College? There are valid arguments and strong feelings on both sides of this issue. My personal view is that we should abolish the Electoral College as soon as possible and elect our president and vice president by national popular vote. My reasons are as follows. First, the conditions that warranted the implementation of the Electoral College in the first place no longer exist. There are strong political parties, national campaigns, instant communications, and convenient transportation. The notion that the office should seek the man and the man should not seek the office, quaint as it is, has not been relevant in literally centuries. Moreover, the states have modified the system to the point that for a long time it hasn't fulfilled the only function contemplated by the constitutional framers that is still relevant, the layer of unbiased, knowledgeable electors. In its current form, All the Electoral College system does is establish a winner-take-all by state mechanism, not intended by the framers, that gives inordinate power to voters in the so-called swing states and allows, for example, the wishes of 4 million Californians to be usurped by 570,000 Floridians, Michiganians, and Ohioans. That is surely not what the Founding Fathers had in mind. To summarize my argument, the Electoral College should be abolished because, due to the environment changing around it and the state legislatures changing its fundamental nature, it clearly no longer fulfills any of the functions the constitutional framers intended it to. Now, there are two ways in which the Electoral College could be abolished. One is by constitutional amendment, which is not an easy path, since it requires the votes of 2/3 of the House of Representatives, 2/3 of the Senate, and 3/4 of the states. There is another way, though. 14 states, plus the District of Columbia, have signed the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. The states in the compact agreed to allocate their electoral votes to the candidate that wins the national popular vote, regardless of which candidate wins the popular vote in the state. This compact is a brilliant end-around that requires no constitutional amendment, yet would guarantee that the winner of the national popular vote would win the election every time. For the compact to take effect, states representing 270 electoral votes would need to join. The 14 states that have already joined represent 189 electoral votes, leaving the compact 81 electoral votes short of adoption. But the compact is currently under consideration in 15 other states, and passage in just 3 of these, Florida, Texas, and Pennsylvania, would put it over 270. Should the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact succeed, it would be a shining example of the states wielding the power vested in them by the Constitution to neutralize something in the Constitution that has become an albatross around our democracy's neck. And that is governing as the Founding Fathers intended. I'm Jack Azul. Thank you for watching.